Welcome to the Dear Dyslexic Podcast, where lived experience meets real conversation. We shine a light on the stories that need to be heard, with honest and inspiring conversations with people with dyslexia and other neurodivergent conditions like Dyscalculia, Dysgraphia, ADHD, and Autism. The Dear Dyslexic Podcast is more than just a show. It's a community, a space for connection, and a movement to rethink dyslexia. Subscribe today and join us on our journey, one story at a time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dear Dyslexic Podcast show. I'm very excited to have Michael with us today. We've had lots and lots of tech issues. He's been very patient, and then when we started recording, I accidentally kicked him off. So we're having a funny start to our session today.
I didn't take it personally.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. Welcome to the craziness that is the Dear Dyslexic Podcast. Michael and I met through another podcast, which is actually Michael's podcast called Dyscastia. Did I just say that right?
Yeah, beautiful.
Great. Awesome. And we have been talking about supporting young people and adults with dyslexia, but Michael does a lot of work tutoring children and young people that have dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. So today's whole episode is going to be talking about those three learning difficulties because we know there's not enough conversations around it.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the purpose of the label. So I think disability is the label to use when you're talking about funding and support and NDIS and things that are official, because I think that's something everybody understands and it has a certain gravity to it, but I'm not sure that is a label that everyone's comfortable with, personally. I like the term difficulty because for me that's just logical because it's difficult. I find reading and writing and kids that live with these learning difficulties find it difficult. I don't generally use the term difference because I think it implies that you've got to do something different or that they learn differently, but they don't learn differently. Everybody learns in the same way. It's just that they probably need things broken down into smaller chunks and a lot more practice and exposures, but it's not an actual difference. You know what I mean? That's why I'm comfortable with difficulty or disability.
I'd love to circle back to the difference and doing things differently, which is actually part of our whole name of our business. But it's interesting what you say about we don't learn differently. But before I sidetrack us again, could you just share a little bit about yourself, Michael, and the work that you do?
Yes. So I work as an intervention tutor. So mostly with kids living with dyslexia or dyscalculia, some kids living with both, but also some kids living with ADHD and autism and mixtures of all of those. Often those neurodivergents kind of sit together. Ultimately, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference to me, because I just look at the kid that's in front of me and think, what do they need? Yeah, so day to day, that's what I do, tutoring kids. And I also have created a whole bunch of resources and software for teaching morphology. So morphology is a big part of English and literacy intervention. So I've built word cracking software, which is morphology software. And we have a program on word cracking called the Literacy Support Kit, which I did with someone called Sally Andrew, and that's designed for students who struggle a lot with literacy. So there are some common literacy intervention programs that are out there, lots of them, and they're really good. But for some kids, even those intervention programs are too difficult and they go too fast. The one that I generally use is called Playbury. And it's a fantastic program, but by the time you get to teaching point 10, it starts getting too complicated for some kids, particularly if kids live with dysgraphia and handwriting's difficult. And so we've designed a whole bunch of resources that let kids progress and keep moving forward, but in a much more simplified format. So they can still get that success and confidence and, move forward without feeling like, now intervention's too hard, and that has, a whole other connotations. Apart from that, I live with autism, ADHD, dyslexia and dysgraphia. So I have lived experience of that, which, makes tutoring harder in some ways. But, I think in some ways it's good because I can kind of empathise with where the kids are at. Because I kind of think if I can understand it, well, they can probably understand it. And I'm married. I have 2 kids. Both live with dyslexia. My daughter lives with dyscalculia. There you go. That was a big mouthful.
No, that was great because I knew you created a program, but I was just in the wrong area. It was literacy, not numeracy.
Yeah.
So, how did you end up? Did you train as a teacher originally, or how did you end up tutoring? What was it?
So I started out as a teacher, but it was secondary physical education, drama and science. So a long way away from dyslexia or literacy, deliberately, because I avoided them like the plague. And so I taught for a while, but most of my time was spent working in theatre in my early years. And then I started working in multimedia, I suppose you could call it. So lots of 3D animation, video, designing exhibitions for museums and science centres. And then I worked in the zoo and then the environment department. And then I worked in the disability sector as a marketing manager. So I've done lots of different things. And then I had kids, and my first child was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I remember the psychologist was kind of introducing us to the diagnosis and saying, this is what it means. And my wife started to laugh, and the psychologist said, what's so funny? And she said, well, you're describing my husband, not my son. And I was like, what? Really? I don't live with dyslexia, do I? And so, like many people, my kind of, initial diagnosis started with my kids being diagnosed. And then my daughter was diagnosed later with dyscalculia, which is difficulty with maths. And I'd never heard of it. And we were trying to find a tutor for her and just couldn't find one. There was just nobody, not even at Spelled or any of the usual places you would look. And so, I wasn't bad at maths, and I was trained as a teacher. And so I thought, well, I'll tutor her in maths. How hard can it be? I don't think I did a brilliant job in those early days. But that got me really interested. And then eventually I got formal training, when I decided, okay, I'm going to make this my job, which was, I think, about 6 years ago now. I quit my full-time job. I was actually made redundant, and so it kind of forced my hand, and then started tutoring, and I haven't looked back since. Yeah, so a strange journey.
Well, I find that a lot of dyslexics have a similar kind of roadmap with employment. They can end up doing lots of different things throughout their career.
And I have always found it difficult to be in a job for a long time. I think the longest time I was in a job was 5 years. And so tutoring now is my longest time, even though I'm self-employed. I've made it past the 5-year mark.
If you haven't done so already, make sure you sign up to our mailing list so you can keep up to date with everything we are doing at Rethink Dyslexia. So head to rethinkdyslexia.com.au. And don't forget, if there's anything you heard today that was distressing, you can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.